What did you do then?
Put a bag over his head. I put a cloth over his head, a T-shirt, and a bag so he couldn't tear a hole in it. And he subsequently died from that.
Between 1974 and 1991, a total of 10 people were blinded, tortured, and all 10 of those murders were impossible to solve. At least, until their murderer became dangerously cocky and hungry for attention. I'm Panda, and today we'll be learning about Dennis Rader, the BTK Killer. Before getting ahead of ourselves and jumping straight to the BTK Killings, let's first learn about who this man was. Born March 9th, 1945, to Dorothea May and William Rader, Dennis was one of 4 boys, the others being Paul, Bill, and Jeff. Some sources give Rader's place of birth as either Columbus or Pittsburgh. However, at the very least, we know he grew up in Wichita. Both of his parents worked very long jobs, and as a result of this, their children were paid little to no attention, with Rader saying he felt ignored by his mother in particular and resents her for it. From a young age, Rader had sadistic sexual fantasies involving the torture of trapped and helpless women, and he also took pleasure in torturing, hanging, and killing small animals. Rader acted out his sexual fantasies of voyeurism, autoerotic asphyxiation, and cross-dressing, and he would often spy on female neighbors while dressing in women's clothing, including underwear he had stolen. Later in his life, during cooling-off periods between murders, Rader would take pictures of himself wearing women's clothing and a female mask. He later admitted that he would be pretending to be his victims as part of a sexual fantasy. However, Rader kept his sexual proclivities well hidden, and he was widely regarded in his community as being normal, polite, and well-mannered. Rader attended Kansas Wesleyan University after high school, but received mediocre grades and dropped out after only a year. He served in the United States Air Force from 1966 to 1970, and upon being discarded, he moved to Park City, a suburb of Wichita, where he worked in a meat department of a supermarket with his mother. Rader married a woman named Paula Dietz on May 22, 1971, and had 2 children, who they named Carrie and Brian. He also attended Butler County Community College in El Dorado, earning an associate's degree in electronics in 1973. He then took on another stab at university by enrolling in Wichita State and graduated in 1979 with a Bachelor of Science degree, along with majoring in Administration of Justice. Rader initially worked as an assembler for the Coleman Company, an outdoor supply company. He worked at the Wichita-based office of ADT Security Services from 1974 to 1988, where he installed security alarms, in many cases for homeowners concerned about the BTK Killings. And finally, Rader was a census field operations supervisor for the Wichita area in 1989 before the 1990 federal census. In May of 1991, Rader became a dog catcher and compliance officer in Park City. In this position, neighbors recalled him as being sometimes overzealous and extremely strict, as well as taking pleasure in bullying and harassing single women. One neighbor even complained that Rader had killed her dog without any given reason. Rader was a member of Christ Lutheran Church in Wichita and had been elected president of the church council. He was also a Cub Scout leader at some point, however, we couldn't find when this was exactly. On July 26, 2005, after Rader's arrest, his wife was granted an emergency divorce, waiving the normal waiting period, and in an interview with ABC News in 2019, Rader's daughter Carrie said she still writes to her father and has now forgiven him, but struggles to reconcile him with the BTK Killer, stating they were a normal American family. With his background out of the way, let's now move on to the reason you're all here, the BTK Killings. January 15th, 1974. 4 members of the Otero family were murdered in Wichita, Kansas. The victims were Joseph, age 28, Julie, age 33, Josephine, age 11, and Joseph Jr., age 9. Their bodies were discovered by the family's older 3 children, who had been at school at the time of the killings. After Rader's arrest in 2005, he had confessed to killing the family, and that in October of 1974, he wrote a letter, which he'd hidden inside an engineering book at the Wichita Public Library, that described the murder in graphic detail. Between the spring of 1974 and winter of 1977, Rader killed 3 more women: Catherine Bright, April 4th, 1974, Shirley Van Relford, March 17th, 1977, and Nancy Fox, December 8th, 1977. In early 1978, Rader would send a letter to the television station KAKE in Wichita, claiming responsibility for the Oteros, Bright, Relford, and Fox. He suggested many possible names for himself, including the one that stuck: BTK. He demanded media attention in this letter, and it was finally announced that Wichita did indeed have a serial killer at large. A poem was enclosed with this letter, titled "Oh, Death to Nancy," a parody of the folk song "Oh, Death." In the letter, he had also claimed to be driven by Factor X, which he characterized as a supernatural element that also motivated Jack the Ripper, the Son of Sam, and the Hillside Strangler murderers. Rader intended to kill others, such as Anna Williams, who in 1979 escaped death by returning home much later than expected. Rader explained during his confession that he became obsessed with Williams and was absolutely livid when she evaded him. He spent hours waiting at her home, but became impatient and left when she didn't return from visiting friends. The next victim of Rader was Marnie Hedge, a 53-year-old woman found dead on May 5, 1985, on East 53rd Street North, between North Webb Road and North Greenwich Road in Wichita. Rader killed her on April 27th and took her body to his church. There, he photographed her body in various bondage positions. After this, he had used some black plastic sheets along with other materials he stored at the church and dumped her body in a remote ditch. This murder was one he called Project Cookie. In 1988, after the murders of 3 members of the Fager family, a letter was received from someone claiming to be the BTK Killer, in which the writer of the letter denied being the perpetrator of the Fager murders and credited the killer with having done admirable work. It was not proven until 2005 that this letter was in fact written by Rader, and he is not considered by police to have committed this crime. In the 1980s, 2 women who were aware of Rader's stalking filed restraining orders against him. One of them also changed their addresses to avoid him. However, the next person who caught Rader's eye wouldn't be as lucky, and on February 1st, 1991, at West 117th Street North and North Meridian Street in Park City, the body of Dolores E. Davis was discovered, who Rader had killed back in January on the 19th. Unfortunately, 10 lives were lost, but thankfully, the death of Dolores would see the end of the BTK Killings, and it would seem as though this would forever be considered a cold case. At least, until Rader initiated a series of communication to the local media. In March of 2004, the Wichita Eagle received a letter from someone using the name Bill Thomas Killman. The author of the letter claimed that he had murdered Vicki Weggerl on September 16, 1986, and enclosed photographs of the crime and a photocopy of her driver's license, which had been stolen at the time of the crime. Before this, it had not been definitely established that Weggerl was killed by the BTK. DNA collected from under her fingernails provided police with previously unknown evidence, and they began DNA testing hundreds of men in an effort to find the killer, and before the court ordered the samples be destroyed, over 1,300 people had been tested. In May of 2004, television station KAKE received a letter with chapter headings for the BTK Story, fake IDs, and a word puzzle. On June 9th, a package was found taped to a stop sign at the corner of 1st and Kansas Roads in Wichita. It had graphic descriptions of the Otero murders and a sketch labeled "The Sexual Thrill Is My Bill." Also enclosed was a chapter list for a proposed book titled The BTK Story, which mimicked a story written in 1999 by Court TV crime writer David Lohr. In July, a package dropped into the return slot at a public library contained more bizarre material, including the claim that he was responsible for the death of 19-year-old Jake Allen in Argania, Kansas. However, the claim was false, and the death was ruled a suicide. After his arrest, Rader admitted that he had been planning to kill again, and he was already stalking his next victim and had set a date, October 2004. But Rader was arrested in 2005, so what exactly happened on that date? Well, in October, a manila envelope was dropped into a UPS box in Wichita. It had many cards with images of terror and bondage of children. It also included a poem threatening the life of lead investigator Ken Landwehr and a false autobiography with many details about Rader's life, which were later released to the public. In December, Wichita police received another package from the BTK Killer. This time, the package was found in Wichita's Murdoch Park. It had the driver's license of Nancy Fox, which was noted as stolen from the crime scene, as well as it included a doll that was symbolically bound at the hands and feet and had a plastic bag tied over its head. In January of 2005, Rader attempted to leave a cereal box in the bed of a pickup truck at Home Depot, but the box was discarded by the truck's owner. It was later retrieved from the trash after Rader asked what became of it in a later message. The surveillance tape of the parking lot from the date of the failed package drop-off revealed a distant figure driving a black Jeep Cherokee that dropped off the box in the truck. In February, more postcards were sent to KAKE, and another cereal box left at Aurora location was found to contain another bound doll. In his letters to police, Rader would ask if writings, if put on a floppy disk, could be traced or not. The police answered his question in a newspaper ad posted in the Wichita Eagle, telling him it would be in fact safe. On February 16th, Rader sent a purple 1.4 megabyte Memorex floppy disk to Fox affiliate KSAS-TV. Also enclosed were a letter, a gold necklace with a large medallion, and a photocopy of the cover of Rules of Prey, a 1989 novel about a serial killer. Police would find metadata embedded in a deleted Microsoft Word document that was, unknown to Rader, still stored on the floppy disk. The metadata contained the words Christ Lutheran Church, and the document was marked as last modified by Dennis. An internet search determined that a Dennis Rader was president of the church council, and when investigators drove by Rader's house, a black Jeep Cherokee was parked outside. This was strong circumstantial evidence against Rader, but they needed more direct evidence to detain him. Police obtained a warrant to test a pap smear taken from Rader's daughter at the Kansas State University Medical Clinic, and DNA tests showed a familial match between it and the sample from Wegerl's fingernails. This indicated that the killer was closely related to Rader's daughter, and combined with the other evidence was enough for police to arrest Dennis Rader, the BTK Killer. On February 25, 2005, Rader was arrested while driving near his home in Park City shortly after noon. An officer asked, "Mr. Rader, do you know why you're going downtown?" Rader replied, "Oh, I have suspicions why." Wichita Police, the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, and ATF agents searched Rader's home and vehicle, seizing evidence including computer equipment, a pair of black pantyhose retrieved from a shed, and a cylindrical container. The church he attended, his office at City Hall, and the main branch of the Park City Library were also searched. The next morning, Wichita Police Chief Norman Williams announced, "The bottom line, BTK is arrested."